Have you ever stopped to think about where trash goes after it disappears from sight? That bag we leave on the sidewalk or that goes down the building's trash chute seems to disappear as if by magic. The bag we leave on the sidewalk seems to disappear as if by magic after the garbage truck passes by. But the truth is, it has to go somewhere. Everyone knows where those places are: landfills, recycling plants, incinerators. But what you may not know is that for many years, that somewhere was China. Yes, the world's most populous country was also, for a long time, the planet's trash can. Container after container arrived from all over the world: plastics, paper, electronic scrap, old metals. All of this crossed entire oceans to be processed on the other side of the world. But that story has changed. And the turnaround was so radical that today some Chinese cities are even digging up old trash from landfills because they no longer have enough waste. A country with almost 1.5 billion inhabitants that, in certain places, simply runs out of trash. But after all, how can the largest producer of waste on the planet reach this point? What happened? You will discover all this and much more now. Today, Bello Mundo takes you to the east to show you what China does with its trash. Number 1. The world's trash can. At the end of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st, China experienced a curious situation. It became known as the planet's trash can. And this nickname was no accident. In fact, it arose because the country received more foreign waste than anywhere else in the world. And why did China buy trash? Because it was growing at an impressive rate and needed cheap raw materials. Other people's trash fit the bill. Used plastic supplied factories, scrap metal went to the steel industry, and old paper was reused in new packaging. In 2016 alone, almost 70% of the plastic recycled in the world ended up there. More than 7 million tons in a single year. All in all, 160 million tons of waste crossed oceans, generating more than $20 billion. Much of it came from rich countries such as the United States, several European nations, and also Latin America. To give you an idea, Brazil, the largest country in Latin America, also joined this route. In 2017, more than 25,000 tons of paper and almost 15,000 tons of scrap metal, mainly copper, were sent to be recycled by the Chinese. However, this waste did not arrive clean and organized, as many people might think. It came mixed with food scraps, chemicals, and even toxic materials. The city of Guiyu, in the south of the country, ended up becoming famous because of this. There, electronic waste was dismantled by hand, without any protection. The result was disastrous. And what once seemed like a good deal in the end wasn't so good after all, until the government decided to put an end to it. Number 2. The turning point. After years of importing tons of waste, the bill came due. The scenario was already one of ecological disaster and public health crisis. Contaminated rivers, poisoned soil, children with heavy metals in their blood. China was paying dearly for recycling other people's waste. At the same time, the country no longer depended so much on this material. The population itself produced enough waste to fill entire landfills. In other words, in addition to dealing with the problems brought on by foreign waste, it still had to face its own mountain of filth. That was when, in 2017, the government decided to turn the tide. It sent a statement to the World Trade Organization, warning that it would no longer accept most of the so-called foreign waste. And the measure was not long in coming. In January 2018, the rule came into force. Several categories were banned at once: low-quality plastics, mixed paper, textile scraps, scrap metal, and even some types of metals. In the following years, the siege tightened even further. By 2019, more than 50 types of waste were already banned. And then, on the first day of 2021, came the definitive turning point: a total ban on the import of solid waste. No more containers. The impact was immediate. Ports in the United States, Australia, Japan, and European countries were overwhelmed with waste with nowhere to go. The world, accustomed to sending its trash to China, was left with no way out. Number 3. The bet on incineration. Meanwhile, the Land of the Dragon began a new chapter. It had to learn to deal with its own mountain of waste on its own. And that was no small feat. It is estimated that the country generates more than 200 million tons of urban waste per year. In giant cities like Shanghai on the East Coast and Beijing, the capital, landfills couldn't keep up. A striking example was the landfill in Xi'an, one of the country's largest cities, located in the central region and known as the historical cradle of China. This landfill was designed to last 50 years. In just 25, it was already completely full, and it wasn't just a question of space. The decomposition of this waste released methane, one of the most potent greenhouse gases. In addition, the risk of leachate leaking into the water table increased every day. Landfills became an environmental and public health time bomb, ready to explode. The response was to bet on a bold strategy, turning waste into energy. Instead of burying mountains of waste, China decided to burn it in modern incineration plants, capable of generating electricity in the process. The concept was not new. Countries such as Japan and Sweden had been doing this for decades. But what caught the attention was the scale. In just a few years, China skyrocketed in the construction of these plants. Dozens of provinces gained incinerators equipped with filters, reaction towers, and pollutant control systems. The progress was so rapid that, as of 2020, incineration already surpassed landfills as the main destination for urban waste. And in several large cities, more than 70% of waste is now burned to generate energy. In a matter of years, the country has managed to make a historic shift, from a symbol of landfill pollution to a world leader in turning waste into energy. But how do these plants work inside? That's what we'll see next. Number 4. How waste-to-energy plants work. When it comes to incineration, many people think of something simple, as if it were a burning landfill with piles of bags on fire in the open air. But the reality of modern plants is a different story. In China, these plants function as true energy factories, with technology that resembles a refinery more than a burning landfill. The process begins in closed warehouses. Trucks dump mountains of waste into huge sheds, where mechanical cranes grab the waste and throw it into furnaces. These are high-capacity furnaces, designed to operate at extremely high temperatures. The heat generated turns water into steam, and this steam drives turbines that produce electricity. Each ton of waste can yield hundreds of kilowatt-hours. In other words, what 5 families discard in a month can power an entire house for the same period. And it's not just burning for the sake of burning. These plants have state-of-the-art filters, chemical reagents, and neutralization towers. They reduce harmful gases such as sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides, control particle emissions, and even treat leachate before it leaves the plant. Nothing is dumped raw into the environment. Even the ashes have a destination. The heavier ashes, known as bottom ash, can be used in cement or road paving. The lighter ones, known as fly ash, which are full of heavy metals, undergo special treatment so they don't become a toxic bomb. In some cities, such as Beijing, there is an extra step. Part of the organic waste is fermented before burning, to increase its energy power. In other words, it's not magic and nothing is improvised. It's heavy engineering that turns dirt into light. However, this bet had a curious effect, and an unexpected problem soon arose. Number 5. The curious problem of too little waste. With so many plants springing up at a rapid pace, China solved one problem but ended up creating another. That's right, some regions began to face a situation that seems like a joke. There wasn't enough waste to burn. It may sound absurd in a country with almost 1.5 billion inhabitants, but it's true. Incineration capacity grew so much that, in certain provinces, the plants were idle. Some even operated only half the time. Others began to compete with neighboring cities for the same waste. There were places where trucks had to travel extra miles just to bring in waste from outside and keep the furnaces burning. And there were even more extreme cases. In certain locations, authorities even dug up old waste from landfills to mix with new waste and feed the furnaces. This helped free up space in landfills and, at the same time, kept the plants in operation. But the risk was high. Old waste has lower combustion power, can release flammable gases, and even contaminate groundwater during excavation. In other words, the problem was no longer how to deal with excess waste, but how to sustain so many plants. A situation that seemed like a joke, but which exposed the scale of the transformation. But not everything can be solved with fire. The next step would be to face an even more complicated challenge: recycling. Number 6. The challenge of recycling. Burning waste solves part of the problem, but we cannot depend solely on that. After all, not everything can or should go up in smoke. China is well aware of this and has begun to face a challenge that is perhaps even more complicated than building incinerators: convincing the population to separate their waste. For a long time, waste disposal in the country was done in a simple way: everything together in the same bag. Organic, plastic, paper, glass, food scraps, broken electronics. This made recycling difficult and made incineration less efficient, since a lot of wet material interferes with burning. In recent years, the government has decided to change the game. Cities such as Shanghai and Beijing have implemented mandatory waste separation programs. In Shanghai, since 2019, residents have had to put their waste in different containers or risk being fined if they get it wrong. Shortly afterwards, Beijing followed suit. Now, residents have to dispose of their waste in different containers. Those who insist on not separating their waste may even be fined. This model has begun to spread to other cities. Each one is testing its own way of dealing with waste. Some invest more in selective collection, others in composting. And there are even those who bet on apps that reward residents who separate correctly. Even so, progress is slow. It is estimated that the recycling rate in the country is between 20 and 30%. This is well below countries such as Germany, which exceeds 50%. On the other hand, the average Chinese citizen produces less waste than Americans or Europeans, which makes the comparison less direct. Another curious detail is the role of waste pickers. In many cities, it is elderly people who collect cardboard, bottles, and cans from the streets. They feed a parallel recycling network that still has significant weight. But how long this model will be sustainable is an open question. Ultimately, recycling has become the new battlefield, and the next phase of waste management depends on it. Number 7. The war on plastic. Of all types of waste, plastic has always been the most troublesome. It takes centuries to decompose, clogs rivers, invades the ocean, and has even been found in food and table salt. China, which has long been identified as one of the world's largest consumers of plastic, has decided to tackle this problem head-on. In 2020, the government announced an ambitious plan to gradually phase out single-use plastics. Starting in 2021, non-biodegradable plastic bags began to be banned in large cities. Soon after, straws, disposable cutlery, and styrofoam packaging were also added to the list. The goal is that by the end of 2025, these items should disappear from the entire Chinese territory. In practice, the transition is still uneven. In neighborhood markets, many people continue to use plastic bags. But in several cities, biodegradable or reusable substitutes are already gaining ground. It is a curious contrast. While some shelves display products packaged with excessive plastic, traditional markets still sell vegetables in bulk, with much less packaging than in many Western supermarkets. Another important detail is the behavior of different generations. Older people who come from rural areas have a habit of reusing everything, from jars to bottles. Young urbanites, accustomed to convenience, consume more disposable items. This clash of customs helps explain why cultural change does not happen overnight. Even so, the message has been sent. The country does not want plastic to continue accumulating as a toxic legacy. And this movement paves the way for a new stage, exporting its experience abroad. Number 8. Exporting technology to the world. After building hundreds of plants at home, China realized it could turn this experience into a new business. The country began to export not only cheap consumer products, but also technology for dealing with waste. Today, Chinese companies are involved in the construction of incinerators in various parts of the world. Many of these projects are part of the initiative known as Belt and Road, the major infrastructure program that connects China to dozens of countries in Asia, Africa, and Europe. But China's presence has already reached beyond these borders. In the United Kingdom, for example, the city of Billingham has signed a contract with Chinese state-owned companies to build a waste-to-energy plant capable of supplying around 10,000 homes. The project is expected to prevent the emission of more than 130,000 tons of carbon dioxide per year. It is a curious turnaround. The country that for decades was criticized for being the world's trash can is now selling solutions that other countries are buying. Competitive pricing, speed of execution, and industrial scale make Chinese equipment very attractive to governments and investors. Of course, this expansion does not come without controversy. Environmental organizations warn of the risks of over-reliance on incineration. After all, burning solves part of the problem, but it also generates toxic ash and emissions that need constant monitoring. Even so, China has managed to position itself as a global leader in a sector that previously seemed dominated by Europeans and Japanese. And this leadership raises the inevitable question: what will the future of waste management look like within the country itself? Number 9. The future of waste management in China. After decades of receiving foreign waste, betting on large-scale incineration, and even exporting its technology, China faces a new challenge. The future of waste management depends not only on burning more, but on reducing disposal and increasing recycling. The government has set clear goals. By the middle of this decade, at least 2/3 of urban waste must be properly treated. This includes recycling, environmentally controlled incineration, and modern landfills. In addition, waste separation at source must expand far beyond the major capitals. Without this, tons of materials that could be reused continue to go up in smoke. Another focus is transparency. Many plants already display temperature and emissions data in real time. The intention is to show that the mistakes of the past are behind us and that it is possible to generate energy without turning cities into smokestacks. Still, experts remind us, the easiest waste to treat is the waste that never exists. In other words, the real future depends on changes in consumption, packaging design, and the way people deal with what they discard. And that's where China can set an example that goes far beyond the smokestacks of its plants. And now we want to hear from you. Do you believe that the Chinese model can serve as an example for other countries, including ours? Or is there still a long way to go before burning and recycling are truly the solution? Tell us in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like it, and share it. This helps our work a lot and ensures that you don't miss the next stories from Bello Mundo.